Right about now, you are listening to the Legacy and Leadership Podcast, a show where we discuss living as a leader worth following, leading others to do the same, and in doing so, leaving a legacy for future generations. My name is Jimmie Gonzalez Jr., a learning and development professional and leadership coach, sitting down with my co-host, Anthony Devon Watts Jr., an expert contact center leader that has effectively led and developed dynamic teams with high motivation. Together, we have over 30 years experience in the corporate game. Join us as we discuss our growth as leaders, share the lessons we've learned, and interview others to see how their leadership style was shaped as they were mentored by adversity. Well, hello there, good people. This is Jimmie Gonzalez Jr., along with my co-host, Anthony Devon Watts Jr., AKA Leadership Docent, AKA Trey Deuce, my homeboy and good friend. This is episode number 3, and we thank you again for being with us and continuing to listen, continuing to hit play, and hopefully, if you haven't done so already, subscribing, hitting likes, and continuing to share with other people the goodness that is coming at you through the Legacy and Leadership Podcast. So again, this is episode 3. We'll talk a little bit about what we're going to get into. But how are you doing today, man?
Man, I'm doing well. Actually, I'm doing really, really well. I got some nutrition in me. I had this really awesome protein bar, which I'm not going to plug their name because we're not sponsored by them. But it is delicious. And I got to, work actually went pretty well today. Really starting to get into the groove. This is week 5 for me, week 5 or 6 in this new opportunity, man. And it's, now I'm finally just kind of getting in the weeds. So I took about a month or so just to kind of understand the lay of the land and get to know stakeholders and get to know people and build relationships. And now I'm really, starting to get into some work with the team. And I'm excited, man. There's a lot of good work in front of us, but it is a lot of work, bro. Like a lot, like literally building, some of these foundational things from a call center perspective from the ground up. Mm-hmm. And just not even call center related, but also just like good business disciplines. I know I mentioned in one of our podcasts, I was working on something like from a financial, engineering perspective, like redoing the P&L and all that stuff. Like, it's some work, but it's going to be fruitful work. So I'm super excited, man. I'm super excited.
No, I'm glad you're charged up, ready to go, and they got a winner. So I think they knew that within the interview process, and I'm excited to see again your continued progress within that new space, a new company, and see how things continue to progress for you. So that's good to hear, man. Yeah, it's been a good day, for me as well. I'm excited about episode number 3. We switched it up a little bit. Episode number 2, for those that are viewing on our YouTube channel, you were wearing your hat. So I'm wearing my hat. And if you heard episode 2, maybe the camera, this says champion on my hat. Once a champion, always a champion. If you didn't listen to episode 2, you're going to have to go back and hear the story about the wonderful championship experience that I had in my youth playing football. So, once a champion, always a champion.
100%.
But within the last episode, you had the pleasure of interviewing me and asking me some questions. And really the whole purpose of us doing this within these first couple of episodes is we want to give our viewers and our listeners an opportunity to get to know a little bit more about us on an individual basis. And so we're going to be jumping into that. I got a few questions that I'm going to be asking you about leadership, kind of how you got into leadership, some of the things that you wish you knew before you started. So yes, for those that are listening, again, thank you for doing so. We appreciate your time. Stick with us. I think this is going to be good. I've been working with my man and knowing Devon for over a decade now and have been able to see him grow. But on the last episode, I was talking about how excited I was to hear some stories that maybe I haven't heard before. So hopefully you've had time to ponder and think about that. If I've applied some pressure, oh well. I know you're. One thing I do know is that you're good under pressure. So let's go. So you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready, man. Let's get to it.
All right. So one of the first questions that we discussed is, how did you actually get into leadership and develop kind of that first leadership role that you've ever had?
So, kind of like you, right? Even before I had like my first official leadership position, I would say that there were moments where I had some inkling or some affirmations that like leadership may potentially be my calling, or I at least was blessed with certain skill sets and attributes where I felt like I could contribute there. And if anybody has had the pleasure of meeting my father, you will know very quickly that early on in my life, very early on in my life, the disciplines and the skills and the kind of the habits and the expectations of leadership were being instilled in me for a couple of reasons. One, I'm carrying on the namesake, so I'm a junior, right? So you got to make sure the little one is prepared to go out into the world and do right by the family name. And then obviously I'm the oldest and I'm the only boy, right? So you got all of those things. One of the things I knew about my father, I've come to learn about my father, is that, he's always felt like his number one calling in life was to be a father. And so I think when you have, and anybody can relate to this, when you have clarity in your calling, the level of passion and intensity and love that you pour into that, usually comes in abundance. And so he knew that before I was even conceived. And so obviously, when I was brought into this world, he went right into execution on his plan of, how to, develop what he felt was a man that was prepared for what life has to offer. Right. And so my father, he's worked in law enforcement, military. And I usually get a lot actually, from people and strangers who's like, oh, hey, you served. Or so are you in law enforcement? And just because of how I carry myself, and I kind of tell them, well, no, I've never enlisted. I never did law enforcement, but I spent 18 years in boot camp. Just because of how Pops is, and he even had me, making my bed military style. And so I can think back to just kind of different moments throughout the course of my life where he's, just really challenged me on what it takes to be a leader and to influence folks. And the example that you're setting for others, obviously the example I'm setting for my sister, we're only 2 years apart. And so she's watching my every move. And he just understood that the way that I interacted with her and the example I set sent a message to her about what to expect from other men, other boys, and to not take that lightly. Hell, even at times it kind of got a little bit crazy. In eighth grade, I ran for student council president. This is a new school, Odyssey Middle School. Shout out Odyssey Middle School. As a part of the inaugural class, and we actually won the county championship in track. I also did soccer. I was the MVP for both of those things, and so sports was a huge part of my life and a huge part of my leadership development. But I remember telling my pops, like, "Hey, I think I'm going to run for student council president." And I promise you, I could have swore I heard that man, like when I told him, say, "Finally." You know what I mean? And he had already had this like 6-point strategy, you know what I mean, on like how I'm going to win the election. I felt like, he had turned into like Karl Rove or James Carville. He's like, all right, this is how we're going to expand the map and win the electoral college. I'm like, Pops, it's just a middle school. It's just a middle school student council election, right? And even in that moment, man, like I remember we had to go on announcements. And so each of the candidates, you had to sit on the announcement and they talk to you about like your platform and why you, but there's varying degrees of people listening. Right. And so I remember some of the folks that went in front of me, they were talking about, I want to make sure that there's, good drinks and, the vending machines and, I want to make sure that we add an extra day of pizza and, just little stuff like that. Right. And my behind, I get up there after having been trained up by my pops and just kind of, him talking about leadership because he's been in a leadership capacity for a while. I'm sitting up there and I think I started off my address to folks about why me as, I'm humbled by the opportunity to run and be considered to be the first president of Odyssey Middle School. And I know that if I have your vote and your support, and I am successful, it's because I've stood on the shoulders of others, of giants. Like I promise you, he probably ripped a couple lines from like MLK and just like slid it to me like, yeah, incorporate that. Right. So I share that to just kind of paint the picture of, just how much leadership and the seriousness and the weight of being a leader and outside of official positions. Because before I didn't really, rationalize like an official position of management or anything like that. It was just leadership is more about how you carry yourself, about how you interact with those that you love, about how you treat and interact those that you don't know.
Yeah.
Right. And so I remember that. And then I remember probably the first moment where I really was like, oh, okay, people really do look to me for guidance in uncertain situations. I was in the first year of college. I had gone to Colgate University in upstate New York. Now, for those who don't know, I am a native Floridian. So I spent 18 years of my life in Central Florida, beautiful weather. When you were doing football, like the worst it would get is, it'd rain a lot, right? But it was still like 75, 77 degrees outside. And something told me, okay, so for college, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to as close to Canada as possible and play football and just let me just see what that's like, right? And I ended up in Colgate University in upstate New York. And I actually got to go up there with a childhood friend of mine who we had went to kindergarten together and went our separate ways, and then had an opportunity to kind of play football and link back up as young adults. And so we thought that was going to be dope. And I met some really, really cool people and some great friendships, people that I'm still interacting and talk to today. And I remember we had decided to make a trek to Syracuse, and Syracuse is about 2.5 hours away from Colgate University in Hamilton.
Okay.
Right. And so we end up convincing a sophomore to let us borrow their car to make the 2.5 hour drive to Syracuse. And we go out there and we, have a good time. We're exploring the mall. We're getting into nonsense just because we're hard headed and we don't know no better. You got, 3 Florida boys and like 2 boys from Cali, and we're upstate New York. So we're just like, let's see what this is about.
Yeah.
And I recall that we got out of the mall, like we had blew like a couple hours at the mall, and we had got out of the mall. And when we got out of the mall, we started noticing that it is snowing. There's like snow flurries. Now, mind you, the sum experience of this entire group in driving in snow is 0 years. None of us have ever driven in snow before. And if you've been in upstate New York, it's also pretty mountainous, hilly, right? And so we have to make this 2.5 hour drive back to campus in somebody else's vehicle as the snow's coming down. And who do you think they wanted the driver's seat? So we're trying to figure it out. And I remember all of them just looked at me like, all right, so Devon, you got this? Now, just to put it in perspective, I was clearly the youngest out of everybody in the group. Like in terms of the least amount of years on the road, that was me, right? But I just realized, like, just looking at my team, like looking at my friends, and the fact that they had confidence in my ability to get them home safely, get us back home safely, like, well, yeah, hell yeah, I owe it to them. I got to make this happen. So that was a moment, though, for me in hindsight, where I could say that, there was a moment of uncertainty and, a little bit, obviously scary. Yet people look to me in that moment to provide guidance, to provide safety, to provide support. And then in terms of just like officially, my first official leadership position was actually with the same company where we met, where I started off as an agent on the phones. And I actually got to that company because prior to that, I was working for AT&T Singular. And I'd been working there for about 11 months. I was doing collections, cutting people's phones off and, all that good stuff, trying to get payment arrangements. And I thought it was, I ended up getting fired from that job because I thought it was a better idea to go on a cruise than to show up to work.
I remember you told me about that.
And so they made their decision. And so I quickly found myself in need of employment to make sure I could pay for my very first car, my baby, my '03 Impala, my Chevy Impala. I drove that for 10 years. And so I ended up stumbling across the opportunity. It turned out to be a great experience in the sense that I was able to write my own paycheck and earn commission. I was working 30 hours, but it was like full time. And so I was banking. And it was really kind of just I'm going to do this until I figure out what the next step is for me. And it was probably maybe about 4 months in or so that I really started to just be aware that there was more opportunity available than just, answering the phones and, making sales. And that was largely driven by the fact that, I was surrounded by some leaders that, I was able to pull from. And I was like, oh, man, okay. They're making a career out of this. They're able to make a difference in people's lives. Like the same type of coaching and development that I'm receiving, that's all they're responsible for doing. And when I found myself in a position where folks were actively seeking me out for guidance on how to handle situations and, hey, can you teach me this? Hey, can you listen to me? And I knew I wasn't in any type of official leadership capacity, but people, again, were looking to me for guidance in a moment of uncertainty. I said, well, let me see what can come of this, how rewarding and fulfilling this can actually be. And so, and the rest is history from there. Here I am 12, 13 years later. And so I'm thankful for that.
Yeah. No, that's cool. A lot of things to unpack there, man. We've had a lot of conversations about both of our fathers, and it's cool to hear. I feel like I heard about that 8th grade story before, but the way that you explained it this time, I could just see Pops again, just being super proud. And like you said, like, yeah, this is the moment, this is the time. And as a dad and seeing your kids grow up, like, yeah, you had those moments where you're just hoping that, your child is able to take advantage of this moment. Pops is pretty cool, man. Obviously I've had an opportunity to have some really good conversations with him as well. And we're actually not that far apart in age.
Pop's 51.
Yeah,
Pop's 51. So he can be big, bro.
Yeah, for sure. And then, what's interesting, I didn't mention it in the last conversation that we had, but it's ironic, the story that I told in the last conversation, in the last episode, was about an 8th grade experience. Your example is about an 8th grade experience. And even what you mentioned about that story in college and that driving back from Syracuse, when you think about kind of those first leadership moments, I was in an apartment with 3 other guys. And because of things I had been through, and my mom raised me right and taught me how to, budget and take care of myself. Like, I was the one who was entrusted to make sure that all the bills were paid. And realize that, okay, one, like, why do I have to do this? But nah, I should be the one to do this. And have, the discipline and the wherewithal to make sure that our electricity didn't get turned off, that the water didn't get turned off. So it's, again, kind of ironic from that perspective. But yeah, it's I remember you talked about your first leadership experience, and I remember the first real conversation that you and I had, and obviously just kind of peeping you out from um, how you're interacting with your team. And I remember asking, I want to feel like I feel as if your desk was right outside of my office.
Mm-hmm.
And I called you in, and we're talking, and you're kind of talking to me about your perspective, and like and my goal is to run my team like it's my business, and you were talking about ownership, and I'm just looking at you, but just like, man, like, for being a young man, like this dude, he knows some things. He's already seen some things. He's learned some things, and has not just a good head on his shoulders, but just a really good perspective of ownership and accountability and what that means from a leadership perspective. So that was always cool to see that at that moment, and then again how you just continue to grow and develop with that accountability, and appreciating, I think, even more as you grew the stewardship portion, and what we're being entrusted with, and why it's even that much more important to really run things like this is mine, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And not mine alone, but I have that level of responsibility and accountability. So good stuff, man. Good stuff. So you
Thanks.
mentioned, those first experiences, getting into that leadership position, and people were already kind of coming to you, and seeking your advice and asking you questions, and that gave you even more confidence that was something that you would be able to do successfully. But looking back at the old age of 31, when you look back, 11 years ago or so, uh, what do you wish you knew then that you know now? And how would that have, maybe made some things a little bit different for you at the beginning?
Yeah, man. Um, if I really had to think about it, I think, one of the things I really wish I knew then that I knew now is um, the power in knowing the right question.
Mm,
Like, I think one of the things I early on in my career, like I always just really try to pride myself on is knowing the right answer, right? Like as a leader, like knowing the right answer. Um, and I put almost so much stock in that I've often found myself providing the right answer to sometimes the wrong question,
mm,
right? Especially for people that I was entrusted in leading, or I was developing. Maybe I was giving them a solution or pointing them in a certain direction, or giving them advice, and I don't know when it really clicked for me. Actually, I do know. I take that back. It wasn't until I really started to transition into out of operations and into more of a support type function. Like I went into training, and then I started going into like workforce and process improvement in those kind of worlds where um, my entire existence was built around questioning why, right?
mhm,
So that we can get to the root cause, we can address the issue. And if I had known early on just how powerful questions are, like there's more value in knowing the right question than there is more value in knowing the right answer. Um, I think it would have made some of my mistakes as a leader, some of my failures as a leader,
mhm,
it would have lessened them, and I would have been able to lead at a higher level or contribute at a higher level, because I would have been able to get to the root of what the opportunity is, and when you ask the right questions, you can help facilitate for in other people them getting to the solution themselves, right? And I
yeah,
think that's when you're really doing it right as a leader, when you're able to stimulate a different thought or a different train of thought than they were on, so that they can get to the ultimate conclusion and they feel confident in the solution and they were the ones that provided it themselves. um, that's the most effective way to lead than to be Google, for lack of a better term for folks, because then you create a dependency as opposed to really empowering and creating a independent mindset. And so yeah, I wish I could pass that nugget back on to the 19-year-old me, like, hey bro, I know that you got all the answers, but sometimes your answers are not even to the right question. Why don't you spend some time figuring out what the right question is?
mhm. That's an important skill, knowing, asking the right questions at the right time in the right way. Um, Definitely a valuable skill, and that takes time to develop, to take time to develop that skill. All right. So if that's something that you wish you knew back then that you definitely know now and have learned over the years, a large part of what we were discussing is legacy and kind of what we've built up into this point, but what we're leaving behind for those to come. When you think about the attributes or skill sets that you have as a leader, what are some things that you definitely want to be able to pass on to Geo, to Lennox, to your family, and of course any leaders that you've developing along the way?
Yeah. For this one, I know it may sound like a little corny, and those that have worked with me over the years, if you had an opportunity to attend any of like the new hire classes or anything like that, I usually try to speak at, I've passed this word on, but I truly believe like in the power of self-belief.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, again, there's a bunch of books about it, and it sounds super corny, but I wouldn't be passing it on if I didn't experience the benefits of it myself. Again, I'm huge into self-help, and so I was reading a book where the author was attending this keynote speech,
Mm-hmm.
and the keynote speaker was this artist, and so the artist was doing something super dope. He was painting live, and he was giving this speech live. He was painting, he was giving the speech, he was painting, he was giving the speech. And he asked the audience, he said, he was telling them, actually, he told them, I've given this speech to a group of elementary students. And I asked them, who in here is a great artist? And he said, every single elementary kid raised their hand. Me, I'm a great artist, right? He said, I gave this exact same speech to a group of middle school students. And I asked, who in here is a great artist? And he said, probably about half of the middle school students raised their hand and said, hey, I'm a great artist. He said he gave the same speech to a group of high school students, and he asked them, hey, who in here is a great artist? He said maybe about 10% of the high school students raised their hands and said, hey, I'm a great artist, right? And then he said most recently he gave that same speech to a college graduation, right? Mm-hmm. College commencement ceremony. And he asked who in here is a great artist, and he said you could count on two hands the number of people that raised their hand and said that they were a great artist. And so I was just like kind of chewing on that word, and I couldn't help but be struck by the thought, like, at what point did we stop believing in ourselves and we started believing what other people told us about ourselves? Mm-hmm. And I think back to like kind of like those what seemed like silly moments now, like, as a adolescent, as an elementary student, but like in second grade, Mrs. Schumann's class, we had an assignment. I vividly remember this. We had an assignment, draw what you want to be when you grow up.
Okay.
And I drew myself as an astronaut ninja. Like when I was going to grow up, my job was going to be to fly into space. I was going to get my black belt. I was going to fly into space. I was going to defend the world, the planet, from aliens using karate.
Okay.
And God bless my mama. She put the picture up on her refrigerator. My baby, the astronaut ninja. Right. But I think about like what in that moment made me so assured that I was going to be an astronaut ninja. Right. It's not like I saw an astronaut ninja at career day and I was like, oh, I should explore being that. Right. Like in my mind, I believed it so much that I committed it to paper.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't help but then like just take the next leap, which is like, what could you accomplish if you had that same level of unwavering self-belief from when you were in second grade and you combined it with the years of experience you've gained now as an adult? You know what I mean? Like, what would you be able to achieve? Mm-hmm. And I am fortunate enough, blessed enough to be able to have a testimony that for me shows me what I'm able to achieve just by having that unwavering self-belief and continue to develop these skills. I got some great experiences. I met some great people. I've been able to provide for my family in a way that I could only dream about, as a young man transitioning into adulthood and, trying to figure out how I'm, going from getting fired and trying to figure out how I'm gonna pay my car note to, where I'm at right now, and what I've been able to do for my family and, position us for future generations. And I can attribute that 100% to that unwavering power of self-belief. And so if I don't do anything else, I want to be able to pass that on to Geo, to pass that on to Linux, and to pass that on to any other leader that I have the opportunity to interact with and influence and engage with and pour into, is believe in you, and because that's all you need.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Now that's self-belief, man. It is really critical to. It's not cockiness, but it's a sense of self-awareness, a sense of confidence. And it is somewhat of a shame, as as people do get older. Like, again, when you're a kid, man, like, you can do anything, and the creativity that a child has, kind of how the world starts to influence, and people just get scared, and they stop believing that really anything is possible. And as a dad, definitely those are things that I've shared with my kids, and they're like, you can do anything that you necessarily put your mind to. You just have to really believe that, and hopefully you're passionate about it and you're focused on it. But that self-belief is super important. And we talked a little bit about it in the last episode too, that as much as we try to work on that and continue to believe in ourselves and our abilities, there's still going to be some situations where there's some doubt that creeps in. And knowing that there's people in your past, whether it's your parents and the belief that they instill in you, or other leaders that you've been surrounded with, that again saw things in you that maybe you didn't see in yourself. Just remembering those moments, I think, provides some of that belief as well, that maybe I'm at a point right now where there's a little bit of self-doubt, but you know what, that person believes in me, and they did believe in me in that time. So you know what, I really need to change that stinking thinking, so to speak, and and really believe in what I'm capable of doing, and the blessings and the skills and things that God has given me to be able to move forward and accomplish whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish and you're setting out to do. So the mind is a powerful thing, man. Kind of cliche, people say that, but it really is. Being able to have that positive talk and belief in yourself is powerful, especially from a leadership perspective.
No, man, you hit the nail on the head. And to be honest with you, like, even for me here recently, I really had to draw on that. Like, I was tested, firsthand kind of my situation, and just, obviously, COVID has impacted a lot of organizations and a lot of businesses. And, I found myself in a position in my last role where I was having to make decisions that were impacting the livelihoods of folks, and, having to unfortunately furlough folks, but also trying to figure out ways that I could find work so that I can keep as many people working and employed and earning money for their families as possible. And, after 2 weeks or so of, making those decisions and trying to figure it out and get solutions and delivering the news, at the end of that, I found myself on the other end of that conversation. And, I found myself for the first time in 13 years, not employed and furloughed. And, obviously, I had some great people in my corner, even, in the organization that, continue to check in on me and help out and make sure that, they were there as a resource and support. But I really had to have that gut check, and just, that self-doubt crept in. And I'm just like, man, well, I felt like I was performing. I felt like I was, meeting expectations. I felt like I was doing a phenomenal job. And am I? Like, was I? And where do I go from here? And the thing that was really important for me in that moment was, I have these boys that are looking at me, and how I navigate the situation and how I handle the situation. And they're learning through that process. What do you do when you run into adversity? And I just remember telling myself, like, I know what I'm capable of. I know what the formula has been for me. And I've been blessed enough that I was able to dig myself kind of out of that pit of self-doubt, get back into that reaffirming myself mindset, and found a great opportunity. I really did. I found a great opportunity. And again, I just know how important it is to have that power of self-belief, because you're going to inevitably run into individuals in your life that are going to try and convince you otherwise. And it has nothing to do, and I want to be clear, like it has nothing to do with you and your skill set. It has 100% to do with the fact that somewhere along the way they lost their self-belief.
Yep.
And they're looking for validation that it was the right thing by convincing other folks to let go of theirs.
Yeah. That's just the world, man. We're going to come across people that try to do that, and because of their self-doubt, their insecurities, again, try to, to kind of portray that onto other people. But it's good to have people in your corner, man. It's definitely good to have people in the corner. I remember, when I had left to do Trinity Fitness, and I had left corporate America, and when I came back and again was able to link back up with you and work together again with you, like those first, several months trying to get back into the swing of things, and felt like I was, trying to shake off some rust. I was still in a leadership role in the nonprofit that I was working with. But again, it's different when you're back in the mix and having a huge team and all of the expectations. And again, it's I remember conversations where you're encouraging me about, hey, like these are things that you've done before. I know what you're capable of. Just go ahead and shake the rust off, do what you need to do, and do what I know that you're capable of doing. So it's always great, man, to have people in your corner to remind you of those things when sometimes that self-doubt creeps in, and be able to push those haters away that, again, because of whatever challenges or issues they have in their life, it makes them, kind of cower back a little bit because they see somebody with that self-belief and really feeling like, you know what, no, in the right circumstances and with the right mindset, I really can do anything. So it's yeah, definitely a good word to try to guard against that as much as possible. Not necessarily, to stay away, because especially in a work perspective, sometimes you can't help but be around individuals like that. But just, continue to be confident in who you are and what you're capable of, so you don't fall victim to that yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
So, having said that, as we talk about some of the things that you're hoping to pass on, and you've spoken a little bit about it, but who are some of the leaders that you've been able to draw from over your years, that you're really able to learn from, and pull, whether it's through observations, conversations, you're able to pull from, that's helped you to develop to the leader that you are today?
Yeah, for sure, man. So obviously it goes without saying, Pops, off rip,
Mhm.
whether I knew it or not, he knew from the onset that, I had these skill sets, or he saw something in me and he just wanted to pour into me as much as possible. All the things that he received from his grandparents, because my father was raised by his grandparents,
Mhm.
to all the things he didn't receive from his parents. And actually kind of thinking about that, that's one of the things that I was able to pick up from him, is how there's value in not only learning what exceptional leadership looks like, right, from others, but also learning, um, being able to learn from a lack of leadership.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And being able to put yourself in the space of, I remember what it felt like when I didn't have these things, when I didn't have this type of affirmation, when I didn't have this type of support. Um, and then being intentional about ensuring that nobody else has to experience that if you can influence it.
Yeah.
And so definitely Pops, off rip. In terms of people that I know directly, obviously you, man, from, like you said, that first conversation we had, where I was, hey, I'm trying to run this thing like my business. And me really going through the process of just trying to learn what that would look like, and how I do that within the broader scope of a larger organization, and navigating the personalities, and navigating being able to affect change, and how to actually do those things. And you were instrumental in helping to not temper, but just kind of direct and focus a lot of that drive and that ambition and that hunger. And one of the things that you shared with me very early on, kind of in my leadership walk, that I continue to carry with me, right, is Well, actually, there's two things that you shared,
Mm,
but the one that I'm going to talk about first is, I remember you telling me, you know, the results are great, but it means nothing if you don't have the process. And that was because I had jumped into the training world and I had all this operations experience and I knew I could run my mouth. So I could teach people what they need to know to be effective. And I was able to churn out some high performers, but I wasn't following the FG. I
mm,
wasn't giving them all the curriculum and I was making decisions around, oh, well, they don't really need to learn that. Um, Not having the perspective, the holistic perspective to understand, well, how all of those components that exist in that curriculum
mhm,
do feed something broader than just the function that they're currently in. It could be establishing the foundation for the next function for them. It could be critical information that's a part of our company culture and why we want to continue to make sure that thing is that is carried all the way through. And so I remember you sharing that. And another thing that you shared with me, which I continue to pass on and share, which is, and I think you got it, it was given to you and you passed it on to me, right? But it's, there's, it's not, there's not a time to make a decision until it's time to make a decision. You know what I mean? And that's always been just a good way for me to keep myself honest when, um, I'm really kind of chewing on stuff and overthinking because I went from being a high I type personality and just, hey, no plan, no process. I'm gonna go out there. I'm gonna just talk to people. I'm winging it. It's gonna happen, right? To really becoming more conscientious as a leader as I've continued to grow, and so now my mind is constantly going, and I'm playing 3-tier chess, and I'm like, okay, well, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, but if that happens, I got to do this and do this and do this, and so what decision do I need to make?
mhm.
And at times when there's that type of noise and people are looking for you to make that final decision, I've always been able to lean back to that and say, well, look, there's no need to make a decision until it's time to make a decision, right? And that's given me the opportunity to get more information and to just be more discerning and intentional about the decisions that I'm making. So yeah, absolutely, Richard, for sure. Somebody who's been a champion for me, and um, just kind of been in my corner and encouraged me. Um, and then, I think the other thing about me is I have a habit, a very intentional habit of referring to people that I work with as coach.
Mhm.
And I do that because for me, the title of coach is a sign of respect. It's me acknowledging that I can learn something from you, regardless of what level you're at.
Yeah.
So people that report to me, people that are team leads, people that are in support positions, or people that I report to, I refer to you as coach. Like, hey, what's going on, coach? Hey, what do you need, coach? And again, it's just another reminder for myself that there's something that you can learn from this individual. And so you have to be open to taking instruction, to learning, and then to be able to take those learnings and execute on the field. And so, yeah, I try to pull from everybody that I come into contact with for whatever it's worth.
Yeah, I remember those conversations, and it is important, as a leader, we want results, but a lot of times it's not always about that goal, right? It's about the journey and it's about the process and what you learn through that in order. That's really more important than achieving that actual goal itself. So yeah, man, process is important.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I saw the talent, I saw the skills, and I knew I was like, okay, yeah, he's a great team manager, but I need to get him in training. Like I'm trying to build this team and build what we're trying to do, for the unit. So it was good to be able to work with you even a little bit more intimately in that capacity. Um, so that's good stuff, man. That's good stuff. And yeah, it's being able to draw from the experiences, from your pops, and um, it just really is a blessing. And again, I think about, the relationship with my parents and just how they've been leaders in their own space over the years, and being able to glean from them. My mom was a teacher since I was 3. And, I had an opportunity as I got older to kind of go to some of her classes and just see how she, commands the room, and how she nurtures and how she teaches, and just watching my pops kind of ascend it within a corporate ladder over the years as well, and how he navigated certain situations, and just being able to have that type of mentor as well, that when I get into a spot or if I have some questions, like, hey pops, like, this is where I'm at right now, what do you think, what do I need to do, and being able to have that person to glean from. And then, yeah, man, again, somebody that I was blessed to be mentored by and work with. No point in making a decision until it's time to make a decision. And that's, I was even just having the same conversation with my wife the other day. There's no point in stressing yourself out, you know what I mean? And kind of having anxiety about something until all right, yeah, this is becoming a reality. Now let's really talk about it and start making those decisions. So that's been timely for me. So I'm glad that you were able to really get something out of that, and hold, that with you over these years. And I'm sure you share that with a number of people, along the way as well. So any other last thoughts? I mean, you've talked about some of the leaders that you've been able to draw from, some of the things that you definitely want to make sure you pass on to your kids and to other leaders that you're looking to develop. Either, like I said, final thoughts as we look to kind of land this plane on episode number 3.
No, man, this has been awesome. Like you said, I think, when we went through it in the last episode, you're like, hey, it's actually good sometimes to just kind of take a step back and think about kind of your own leadership story arc and kind of what's gotten to you to where you're at. And especially, I think, for individuals like you and myself, just because, we're always focused on the kind of the next step and, okay, what else can I give? What else can I give? What else can I, how can I support? Where's the next need so I can fill that need? And you don't really take the time sometimes to just stop and look at like where you've been to get to where you're at. So this has been cool. This has definitely been cool. And hopefully folks, found some value and, kind of the nuggets that, I've been able to share from, my story. And, I know that as, we continue to go, with this podcast and share kind of our experiences and really get into maybe some of the moments of adversity that we've been able to pull from specifically, to develop us as leaders, and we've been able to glean some things from. I'm excited to be able to share those. Because I think, both of us, we have some super interesting experiences. And I talked a little bit about, me having to go through the process of, being furloughed and being the sole provider for my family and what that means. And I know that there's a lot of people out there that have, similar stories or in similar situations. And I look forward to being able to share that and how I was able to navigate that. So that people can, take something from it. But, also, we have situations where literally, the building has fallen down around us, like literally, and how you handle that. So, I'm excited, man. I'm excited for where we're heading and to be able to share.
Yeah, so if you haven't peeped out episode 1, we talked a little bit about that, but that's one of the things that we're hoping to bring to our audience and our listeners is, kind of this series of conversations where we're talking about being mentored by adversity. So within those specific episodes, we'll be bringing on somebody else and interviewing them, asking them some questions, and listening to their story of adversity and how they've triumphed through it and how they've learned and grown as a leader. So again, we're all about learning and continuing to grow ourselves. So we're looking forward to being able to bring some guests on with us and learn from them and the stories that they're going to share with us.
Absolutely.
So more to come on that. Looking forward to that. If you haven't done so already, please make sure you subscribe. Again, we appreciate the love. We appreciate you guys sticking with us. Hit the like button, hit subscribe, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Facebook, and share. They say sharing is caring, kind of cliche, but it really is. Sharing is caring. So if you care any bit about either one of us, or even if you don't, if you care about some of the information that we're providing, please, again, continue to share that with your folks out there. We sincerely appreciate it. So I'm having fun, man. It's been good. Like you said, sometimes you get so focused on, what's next. It's always important to take time to stop and smell the roses and think about some of the things that you've been through, how you've been able to grow to get to this particular point. And even as we're having these conversations, just and mentioning people, seeing their faces kind of pop up in my mind. Yeah, man, it's an honor to really be surrounded and have worked with some really great leaders that we've both been able to learn from and continue to help develop and grow ourselves. So that's it, man. That wraps up this episode. Again, we thank you guys for sticking with us, and stay tuned. Stay tuned for the series on Mentored by Adversity and how folks are getting their MBA in leadership as they grow again through some adverse situations.
Rage on that beat, going crazy.
You have just listened to the Legacy and Leadership Podcast.